Chapter 9 Dallas Scott. When I asked Dallas Scott if the Aryan Brotherhood had planned to kill Warden Matthews, he laughed and then became angry. Snitches are always making up things, he explained. If someone really wanted to kill the warden, do you think they would talk about it? Leaning close to the bars that separated us, he added, if the AB wanted someone dead, the first you know about it is when they found the body. I spoke to Scott repeatedly for this book, and he talked candidly about his crimes and his criminal lifestyle. He always refused to admit that he was a member of the Aryan Brotherhood or even discuss the gang. I was not surprised. Of the prison gangs, the Aryan Brotherhood is one of the most secretive, and with good reason. Any member who betrays its secrets is automatically sentenced to die. As we talked that morning, I noticed that Scott marked events in his life by prison incidents. I hit the federal system the same year they executed the red light bandit, he said. Seconds later, he added that something had happened about the same time as the race wars at San Quentin. When this was called to his attention, Scott shrugged. I've never really had much concept of life outside jail. I was 12 years old the first time I went in, and I really haven't been out long enough since to know anything else but this life. Scott claimed his childhood was ordinary. Prisons are full of guys like me, he said. You start out doing small things, bucking authority, and the next thing you know, you were in juvenile hall or jail, and that is where you form your basic personality. For me, it was in 1957 and 1958 when I was in various reform schools. I began smoking dope real big, and whenever I got out on the streets, I got myself into another beef and landed back in jail, and the next thing I knew, I was spending more time in and out. I suddenly found myself caught up in the lifestyle. As the years go by and you get older, you realize more and more that your life is considered a failure by society's standards, Scott explained. You are a jailbird. You don't have any money, no house, no job, no status. In society's eyes, you're a worthless piece of shit. Now you can buy into what society says and decide you really are a piece of shit. Or you can say, fuck society. I live by my own rules. That's what I did. I decided to live by my own standards and rules. They aren't society's, but they are mine, and that's what I've done. In your society, I may not be anybody, but in here I am. There was a point in his early 20s when Scott tried to go straight. He married, had 2 children, and worked as a welder in the Texas oil fields. But it didn't last. Scott became addicted to heroin. In 1966, he robbed a bank in California, was caught, and was sentenced to San Quentin. At the time, San Quentin was in the midst of what prison officials now acknowledge was an all-out race war. The racial turmoil in the world outside prison, where fires were burning in Watts, Detroit, and Chicago, was magnified in San Quentin. Blacks and whites were stabbing one another, not because of anything anyone had done, but simply because of their skin color. Your hate was at a peak, Scott recalled. Your adrenaline was at a peak. Everything was at a peak level all the time. It was like a jungle. You'd get yourself fired up, so by the time that cell door opened, you'd be ready. You didn't have time to analyze and rationalize or philosophize. You just strapped, got yourself a knife, and went out of your cell and did what you had to do. It was in this climate that the Aryan Brotherhood was born. Bureau officials claim that Dallas Scott was one of its founding members. I asked Scott if he recalled the birth of the AB, and without acknowledging that he was a member, he explained why the gang had formed at San Quentin. He didn't hide his racist attitude. Whites are everyone's natural enemies, he said. Minorities stick together, but the white man by nature walks alone. I've seen whites sit by and watch a bunch of ninjas attack a white kid in a cell. These yahoos were sitting there thinking, God damn, I'm sure glad it's not me being fucked. But if one white guy had the courage to say, hey, leave that kid alone, and he stepped forward, then there was a good chance that the pack will back off. See, people who herd together deep down are afraid of anyone who has the balls to stand up on his own. Now, I ain't saying that the white man who stands up isn't going to get his ass kicked, but when he stands up, he's letting everyone know that he's willing to do what it takes and get killed if necessary, because he don't like what's going down. And that is intimidating to someone who runs in a herd like blacks do. At San Quentin, the herds were getting out of hand, and a bunch of old white bulls simply said, fuck this, and decided to stand up And you could be damn sure that when these old bulls formed the TIP, Aryan Brotherhood, there were a bunch of white guys who either weren't strong enough on their own or were just afraid, who were damn glad. Scott's explanation, it turned out, was largely based in fact. The Aryan Brotherhood was originally formed to protect the white inmates from being victimized by black and Hispanic gangs. The Black Guerrilla Family, a militant black revolutionary gang with ties to the Black Panther Party, was the first known prison gang and was strong at San Quentin at the time. Chicanos were divided into two gangs: the Mexican Mafia, composed of urban Hispanics from the Matavilla section of East Los Angeles, and their hated rivals, the Nuestra Familia, our family, made up of rural Chicanos. The black and Hispanic gangs preyed on whites as well as on members of their own races. A study at the Criminal Intelligence section of the Arizona Department of Public Safety later suggested that several outlaw bikers who called themselves the Diamond Tooth Gang were the forerunners of the Aryan Brotherhood. The gang members, each of whom had diamond-shaped pieces of glass embedded in his front teeth, tried to recruit other whites at San Quentin but failed to attract sufficient soldiers. Next came the Bluebird Gang, so called because its members had bluebirds tattooed on their necks, but it too didn't last. The Aryan Brotherhood was born when remnants of the Bluebirds joined forces with several neo-Nazi groups. It is likely that it would have survived either except for an unusual tactic adopted by its original members. Black and Hispanic gangs had always relied on numbers for strength and routinely pressured new inmates to join. The Aryan Brotherhood took the opposite tack. It based its membership on each member's physical strength and willingness to kill. Anyone who wished to join the AB had to meet a blood in, blood out rule. Blood in, blood out simply means that to join the AB, an inmate had to earn his bones. In other words, had to kill someone to get in, explained Craig Trout, the Bureau's gang expert. It also meant that there was only one way out of the gang: death. As soon as it was organized, the members of the AB put themselves under what they call the kill-on-sight orders. When the cell doors at San Quentin opened each morning, AB members were required to hunt down and attack black inmates regardless of whether they belonged to a gang. The white gang was convinced that the best way to keep other gangs at bay was to prove that the Aryan Brotherhood was the most ruthless and savage gang in the prison. California prison officials do not know the precise time when this kill-on-sight order went into effect, but in 1970, the California system began seeing a dramatic increase in gang-related violence. 79 gang-related assaults and 11 deaths were reported that year. In 1971, there were 123 assaults and 19 deaths in the following year, 186 assaults and 34 gang-related deaths. The Aryan Brotherhood was not wholly responsible for the increases, but among convicts at San Quentin, it did earn a reputation for being bloodthirsty. Its founding members, estimated by prison officials to be 100 men, tolerated zero disrespect from other inmates. Even a casual comment about the Brotherhood could result in a stabbing if members felt their brothers had been insulted. Legend has it that the best and most respected AB warriors at San Quentin had tattoos of fierce Norsemen drawn out on their arms. Why would anyone join such a group? I asked Scott after once again making it clear that the question was hypothetical and did not imply that he was a gang member. In his mind, personal honor drove white convicts with principles to join. A few older convicts still have principles. They don't let other convicts or the administration push them around, he said. I noticed that Scott had a Norseman tattoo, among many others, on his forearm. When black militancy began to wane in the mid-1970s, the various gangs decided to sign a truce. This brought to a close what convicts called the California Race Wars, but none of the gangs dispersed. The politically motivated Black Guerrilla Family was eventually replaced by the 1980s drug-dealing Crips and Bloods. A 1982 study by Bureau employee Michael Lee Calbatini described the transformation of the AB thus. The Aryan Brotherhood developed during the 1970s into an organized predatory gang whose main interest became protection, extortion, and narcotics in prison. The white gang also began to specialize in contract murders for other gangs and individuals. Catabali wrote, maintaining its savage reputation. In 1985, the Bureau released a detailed study of what it described as the alarming problem of prison gangs. Investigators concluded that the Aryan Brotherhood was not a potent force in the most lower-level federal institutions, but it continued to have strongholds in two penitentiaries, Leavenworth and Marion. In both, AB members played key roles in drug smuggling, extortion, and gambling, and were responsible for several contract murders. Although the AB's power had diminished over the years, in the summer of 1987, it retained a certain status at the Hot House. There were also 3 or 4 actual members being housed in the prison, and Scott was identified by the Bureau as being one of them. Had he not been sitting in the hole, he would have had several AB wannabes, younger convicts, enamored of the gang, washing his laundry and performing other chores for him. Being a gang member gave an inmate an identity as well as protection. The Aryan Brotherhood, in particular, liked to portray itself as family. At one point, Bureau officials found a copy of the AB's secret creed. An Aryan brother is without a care. He walks where the weak and heartless won't dare. And if by chance he should stumble and lose control, his brothers will be there to help him reach his goal. For a worthy brother, no need is too great. He need not but ask, fulfillment is his fate. For an Aryan brother, death holds no fear. Vengeance will be his through his brothers still here. For the brotherhood means just what it implies. A brother's a brother till that brother dies. And if he is loyal and never lost faith, in each brother's heart will always be a place. So a brother I am and a brother I will always be, even after my life is taken from me. I'll lie down content, knowing I stood, head held high, walking proud in the brotherhood. But while members might have rhapsodized about gang membership, the Bureau claimed that most members spent their time dealing drugs and using drugs. Although Scott would not admit he was a gang member, he did acknowledge that he was a career criminal. It is how I make my living. It's a job. But that doesn't mean I don't have any ethics or codes that I live by. Most square Johns don't believe criminals live by any codes or rules, but I do. You have to have standards because they are the only things that set you apart from the real scumballs in here. You got to embrace something, some sort of principles, and if you keep those standards, you develop a reputation. Society may think you are a piece of shit, but in here, you are respected because everyone knows you are strong enough to stand up to your own principles. You see, in here, principles are the only thing a man has. You are as good as your word. An avid reader of the late Western novelist Louis L'Amour, Scott said he had patterned his conduct after that of the Old West. I never rat. I don't say something to the weakest, smallest individual in here that I wouldn't say to the biggest motherfucker. If I give another convict my word, I'll give it. I try to be professional when I do a job. None of these principles apply to guards or square johns. You can lie and steal and scam a square john because he is not part of the criminal society. It's just like I am, not part of your society. Your society rejected me, doesn't want to have anything to do with me, so I owe you nothing. It's like there are two different worlds, your society and the criminal society. And those of us in the criminal world don't have to follow your rules, only our own. And the rules that I choose to follow may be different from another convict's. I don't rob mom and pop stores, but a Safeway or a bank, hey, who's that really hurt? I don't kill innocent people or shoot the place full of holes. But if some teller tries to play a hero when I'm pointing a shotgun in his face, sure, I feel bad about that, but it really isn't my fault because I try to be professional and plan the robbery to do a job without anyone getting hurt. He's the one acting like a fool trying to stop me. When I went to see Scott a few days later, he was unusually mellow. He had received an unexpected gift the night before, he whispered. A convict, later identified by guards as an AB wannabe, had been sent to the hole for arguing with the guard. What no one realized was that he had wanted to be arrested because he was carrying a package of marijuana in his rectum for Scott. If anyone knew how difficult it was to get drugs into the hot house, it was Scott. After all, he was in the hole because of a botched heroin deal. The fact that his friends had sent him such a valuable present showed that he, as Scott put it, was loved and respected. I later learned that Scott's use of those two words was no accident. They are standard salutation that a member of the Aryan Brotherhood uses when he addresses another member. There was little question who had sent the package of marijuana. A voice, banker, age 45. They originally charged me with murder, kidnapping, and bank robbery. But I'm really just a bank robber with really bad luck. You see, my buddy and me were robbing this bank. And when we came outside, there was a cop waiting across the street, and he starts shooting. He shoots my buddy, but I don't know he's dead, so I pull him in the car and drive away. A voice, bank robber, age 45. They originally charged me with murder, kidnapping, and bank robbery, but I'm really just a bank robber with really bad luck. You see, my buddy and me were robbing this bank. When we came outside, there was a cop waiting across the street, and he starts shooting. He shoots my buddy, but I have no idea that he's dead, so I pull him into the car and drive away. When they bust me, they charge me with murder, kidnapping, and the robbery. I asked my attorney, how the hell can they do that? All I did was rob a bank. He says the law says if you're committing a felony and someone dies, a bank teller has a heart attack or something, you can be charged with the murder. He tells me they charged me with the murder because my buddy got killed. He says the law says when I pulled my buddy into the car and drove off, I kidnapped him because I was taking a body from the scene of a crime. That's how they got me for kidnapping. He says the law says that I can be charged with all three, and even though I didn't kill anybody, I didn't kidnap anybody. I say the law sucks.